The Intermediate Plateau. This is a stage in language learning in which a lot of people get stuck. Um, you get past the beginner stage, you learn the basics, you learn basic vocabulary, basic grammar, maybe. Can say a bunch of sentences, you can speak a little bit, but the language is not exciting anymore, maybe, probably, because you're not improving as fast as you were in the beginning or at all. A lot of people just have the feeling that they're stuck and they're not making any progress, and that, yeah, they don't really know what to do. If you, yeah, if this is your case, I'm going to give you a very simple technique, an exercise you can do every day to continue improving without much effort. I mean, it is effort, but it's not super hard work, and it's going to help you improve fast or at a decent pace, without feeling like you're stuck in the intermediate level. If you are in the intermediate level and you feel like you're stuck there and that you will never make it to C1 level or whatever your goal is, fluency, native level, whatever your goal is, um, this is my advice. Just learn more vocab and just do more listening. Do those two things every day. And unless you are really desperate to learn to speak really well, really fast, just by doing these two things, you will improve at a good pace. You memorize vocab and you do listening. And I'm going to show you how to do this. If you memorize vocabulary on a daily basis, 20 words, 30 words, even that is enough. And you listen to content, your comprehension sooner rather than later will be really good. And then the speaking part, you just have to use more language islands and just practice speaking, right? Lots of shadowing and all that. But let's focus on comprehension. So I'm going to show you a very simple technique you can do. This is browserling, which is vocabulary frequency calculator. You paste any kind of text here, and you click here, and you get a list of vocabulary of the text, which is really useful. And in order of frequency, from the most common words to the least common words in the text. So if you've learned the most common 500 words or the most common 1000 words in the language or whatever, you will probably recognize most of the words on top of the list. And then the more you go towards the bottom, the less frequent the words will be and the harder to recognize, unless you are an expert on that specific subject, and then you recognize a bunch. But this is what I recommend you do. So you find some YouTube channel or some podcast or something like that that has transcripts available. This is the good thing about YouTube. Most content has transcripts available. And go for things that are really interesting. This is Polish. It's obviously not Japanese, but like I said in the beginning with my Japanese challenge, I don't plan on doing Japanese full time simply because Japanese is interesting, but I'm interested in lots of different stuff from lots of different places. And there are languages that I want to maintain and keep improving, and Polish is one of them. There's a lot of really interesting content in Polish. But I also do this for Russian and Ukrainian and lots of other languages. I I do it even with languages in which I'm at the C1, C2 level, because, well, it's a good thing to do to just keep learning more vocab, right? So basically, you take the transcript of the whatever you want to listen to. This is a history podcast. So this is around 1 hour, I think. Of Yeah, it's an hour episode, I think. So you paste it, click here, calculate what frequency, and you can see this is. I mean, no, if you don't speak Polish, but this is about World War II, September of 1939. Yeah, it's about World War II. So calculate what frequency, and we get the list of words, and you see that the prepositions and all that stuff. Well, Germans is here for some reason. Well, I guess it's about World War II, so it makes sense. But mostly prepositions, words like that. Yeah, these are the most common words. And then look at this. So the most common word we've got it almost 200 times. And the second one, 139, 131. We go to the bottom of the list, but that's just, it's 4 words that are mentioned more than 100 times in an hour. Those you don't need to memorize with associations because you learn them in context really fast. Anything that's more than 10 here, you learn it. Okay, some of this is regiment, and this is planes, and okay, this topic specific, but I know the topic. But anything that's more than 10 or 20 times in an hour, you'll probably know it already. But the way we'll do this is, so we skim through it. I know all these words. I know all these words. Let's find something I don't know. So you go from top to bottom, so from most frequent words to least frequent words. And once we find a word that we don't know, what's this one? Dimension. So wymiarce is wymiarce? Wymiarze. Polish pronunciation is tricky. Wymiarze is dimension. So now we have to find something that sounds like wymiarze. So Wim. I can't remember a guy who we used to call Wim, and then wymiarze, wymiarze. Reminds me of Asche to Asche, the Rammstein song. So you can visualize, and it was dimension, right? The meaning of it. I don't know if you can see this thing. I'm using. I'm Translator, the plugin. So it should look like that. Let me do something else. That doesn't work either. Yeah, this doesn't work very well with screen recording. Anyway, I'm Translator plugin, right? And you can check the meaning of each one of them whenever you want. So for dimension, can you make a mental image for dimension? Either dimensions, something's dimensions, like measuring something, or another dimension. Another dimension is more visual, easier to, like more, more memorable, let's say. So then I visualize that guy. I mean, but you could visualize like worm or something like that for this, and then that Rammstein song, which is catchy, and then worm and that Rammstein song and dimension. So there's a worm. Visualize a worm in let's visualize the Rammstein guys turning into worms, and then they get transported into another dimension. This is all sounds very crazy, but once you practice a little bit, this gets. I've done, how many of them have I done today? Nah, not many. 76 of these associations. I'll do a couple hundred more later if I have the time. Yeah, so I'll remember that wymiarze is dimension by doing this, but you have to actually visualize it. And then we continue and we do the next one and with the next one. Obviously, my Polish vocabulary is pretty good, so I know most of these. But in the beginning, you have to do it with a lot of them. But I always recommend doing this with the whole list before listening to the podcast. And this way, when you're listening to it later, you will recognize a lot of words, and you will not have to. This is a big problem with input and comprehensible input and all of that. You have to stop and check the words and look up the words if you don't know what they mean. And this makes the reading or the listening or anything you're doing much less enjoyable because you have to stop all the time, and it's no idea, right? So what I recommend is you could do this with books as well, or articles or whatever you're reading. I prefer listening to reading because in real life you have to listen, not read people. So yeah, but you could work for that as well. But my point is, do it with the vocab list before the input, So from most frequent to least frequent, review the vocabulary list of that specific piece of content and memorize the vocabulary with associations. Maybe not all of it, if there are 500 words there that you don't know, but a bunch of them. And it will make the listening much easier later. You'll understand way more. It'll be more enjoyable and you won't have to stop it. All right. And if you do this with a different episode of the same podcast every day, in a couple of weeks, you understand basically everything they're saying. Um, if you've done it with a couple thousand words from their own vocab, you'll understand basically everything. You, yeah, you might, depending on the language, you might not be able to do this. I'm struggling more with Japanese for this because this thing doesn't work all that well. I've discovered with Japanese. I managed a way to make it work though. And now there was someone in the comments that gave me a long list of YouTube channels that are interesting in history, and I just started listening to those after doing this with every episode, of course, because before listening or watching every episode, because otherwise I would just won't understand anything. But if I do this with a few hundred words first from that specific topic about that from that specific video, a podcast episode, I'll understand way more. So this is what I recommend you do. And if you feel like you're stuck in the intermediate plateau, just keep doing this. Just watch or listen to content after memorizing the vocab using this and associations. And the more of it you do, the easier it'll be to understand. And you just have to keep doing this until you understand everything. And it will only take a few weeks to understand everything. Speaking is another matter, but for that you've got Language Islands, and I'm not going to talk about that now, right? Video about Japanese coming later, all right?